What's up, everybody? This is Steve Butts here with IGN. I'm joined by Al Bickham. Hi, Al.
Hi.
Tell the people who you are and what you do.
So my name's Al Bickham, and I'm Studio Communications Manager at the Creative Assembly. So I work with the development team to bring the game and sort of show it off to the world before we actually launch it. So
and that's actually what you're doing here. You're actually doing
exactly what I'm doing. Yeah.
Love that. Well, we're taking a look right now at Total War Rome 2. It's the latest in the Total War series. It's been going now for over 10 years, right?
Yeah. I think the original Total War game was Shogun in 2000, I think. So yeah, we've been going quite a while.
Well, the team has obviously learned a lot in the 10-plus years that they've been working on the franchise, so we're going to take a look at some of the improvements to the game here. We've seen a lot of the tactical battles, so we're going to start off here talking just about the campaign play, which a lot of Total War fans have really been curious about. Tell us where we're starting here in this game.
So what we're playing at the moment is the prologue, which is a kind of self-contained mini campaign. It's a sort of narrative-driven mini campaign, which is, when you first fire up Rome 2, it's the kind of your first point of contact. It acts as a sort of tutorial that leads you into the game and shows you, how to use the various features in the campaign game, how to actually play the game, and how to conduct battles as well.
And it gradually opens up new features. I mean, this sequence that we're watching now, we're just teaching the player how to move the camera around and spot the different cities on the map.
Precisely that. It's teaching us about moving around the map, accessing various items, and how regions and factions work and that kind of thing. So this is really basic level stuff at the moment.
Now, we're noticing some of these cities look a little different than others. Some look a little more developed, some look a little less developed, and they all have this kind of Mediterranean theme, or this sort of Italian aesthetic. Is that particular to this place and to these particular towns?
Exactly, it is, yeah. I mean, where we're playing, so the prologue is set in the, on the Italian peninsula. So it's set, before the starting time of the main campaign game, which is 272 BC. And it's set during the Samnite Wars, which was a series of struggles between Rome. So you've got your Romans here. There's a Roman city here. That's our army there, and against the Samnites, who are these guys in blue here. So this struggle really enabled the Roman Republic to flourish and become ultimately the great empire that it became.
Can you just go back here above Salernum? There's a little volcano here on the map. That's a nice little detail.
Yeah, that's Mount Vesuvius itself. That's the thing that erupted and drowned Pompeii in lava. So we've got little map features like this all over the place. We've got this. We've got a really beautifully modelled sort of version of the ancient world here. And you'll see. I mean, we won't see it in the prologue here, but you'll see the great wonders of the ancient world as well. Things like the pyramids and Stonehenge and the great Library of Alexandria. So there's all these features right across the map, which actually have tangible game effects as well.
But could a player also determine just at a glance here the difference in, say, size and advancement between, say, Capua and Salernum? Yeah,
definitely. So you can see this is a sort of moderately developed city. There's a lot of buildings in it. It's got a solid, unbroken series of walls here. Salernum is slightly less developed. This is going to be an easier city to attack because it's got no walls around the outside. So it's going to be a lot easier for you to get in and fight the occupying army there. And if we go up to if we go up the coast of Italy here to Rome, you'll see this is an example of a much larger city. And as you build, as you develop these cities and you build new buildings, they'll start to appear in the city. So you'll see things like Roman amphitheatres and new construction sites appearing. So you can see just there, they've got a little amphitheatre there. The Romans like their games.
And are these horses just decorative, or do they have some impact on the game?
Sorry?
That you had horses there on the map, or you see these little animals there.
Oh, yeah.
Is that significant at all, or is that just something to make the map seem more alive?
So it's a bit of both, really. I mean, these can kind of give you a hint of some of the units that you can recruit on the map. I mean, horses, cavalry, obviously, but if you're in somewhere like North Africa and you can see elephants and camels walking around, then it's a fairly safe bet. Those are the sort of units you'll be able to recruit there. You might be able to go and head over to North Africa and recruit those things as mercenary units for your armies.
So the player now, as a general, is being asked to march on Salernum. Talk us through this a little bit. How does this work?
So at the moment, we're being taught the basics of army movement on the map. So I literally select my army here, click him over here, and off he goes. Goes into marching mode. You see the general on his horse there. So and what I'm doing here is I'm guarding the pass. This road here is the only route to Rome, and we're defending it from the invading Samnites at the moment. So my army's acting as the the stopper in this kind of bottleneck here. So we're protecting Rome from the south effectively.
Now, this is limited just for this particular episode, but in the full campaign, players will be able to move their armies via sea and land behind guarded passes like this.
Yeah, exactly. So, if it was playing the full campaign game here, then, the Samnites, might take this army here, pop them in a boat and sail them around the coastline here and dive straight into Capua. That's a very real threat. So,
and that's largely automated for the player now, right? You don't have to manage separate fleets of transports.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you'll still have, you can still build big fleets of warships, and naval battles are more advanced than we've ever done them before. But if you're just moving troops across water, as long as they can reach a port, they can. I would move my army to say here, and if I gave it a movement order here, they'd just jump in some boats and sail off. So you don't have to build separate transports, separate kind of troop containers to move them around. So. Now, I'm being asked to recruit some units here, so this is the first time we'll have come across this as a new player. So all we literally do, we'll click the recruit units button, and then you see the list of available unit types dictated by the kind of buildings we have, the kind of technologies we've researched. So, we've got a fairly basic roster of Roman units here. So we've just added a Hastati unit to our army here, and our army has gone into muster stance, which means he'll sit there, and the new unit will be raised. And you can see here we've got one turn to build that. So
you're not allowed to move the army while you're waiting for new forces to join.
Exactly. It'll cancel the kind of recruitment order if you do that. So.
And when you're recruiting, you're doing that from nearby towns in friendly territory. What about when you move into enemy territory? How does that work?
Well, wherever you are in the world, you can always recruit some kind of units, because there's always mercenaries, there's always sellswords, that are out there in the world. So wherever you are in the world, you'll be able to hire new units. But the downside of that, it's very incredibly handy. If you're about to go into a battle and you're a bit underpowered, you think, I need some more archers. So you could recruit a couple of units of local archers to help you out. But of course, the upkeep cost for that is quite crippling, because you have to keep paying your mercenaries to keep them on side. So, it's much cheaper in the long run to recruit your own kind of core unit types. So here, this is where all the tech trees live. This is the research panel here. So we're doing our very first piece of research here. So we're going to research supply reforms.
And what does that allow players to?
So that essentially unlocks the next building, the three building chains for military technology. So so we have army management, we have tactics, and we have siege, which will siege obviously it would give us a lot of bonuses to attacking cities and the use of siege weapons. There's also three civic trees as well, which will improve your abilities to manage your cities, your regions, your provinces right across your empire, and also unlock new building chains as well, which will enable you to then recruit more effective troops, or again in turn manage your cities better, increase your income, that sort of thing.
We've always sort of seen that in the Total War series, you've selected settings where there has been an opportunity for tremendous technological growth. That is sort of a revolutionary period for warfare and things like that. So it's interesting to see that that civil tree as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this whole era was about about rapid technological advancement and the discovery of the application of science, almost. So it's a really interesting period from that perspective. And if you play as different factions, you'll have access to different technologies. So depending on who you play as, you'll be able to sort of steer your growing empire in certain interesting directions.
Well, let's talk about the growing empire. One of the things that I felt the series has struggled with is the burden of late game management. Going through each and every single territory and adjusting the tax rate per region. How have you streamlined that in Rome 2?
Well, the way we work now is that when you have across the map, you've got obviously a number of different regions, but within those regions now, we group regions together into provinces. And when you could have say 3 cities in a province, so say Salernum, Capua, and Rome, say, would all be in the same province. And then what that means is you manage the tax rate, and all the general kind of management for that province is done from a single city, from a single point in the interface. So you don't have to go and individually manage tax rates and population happiness and that kind of stuff in every single region. So and that really greatly reduces the burden of micromanagement, especially later on when you own maybe a considerable amount of the campaign map is your territory. So
hopefully you aren't.
Well, hopefully not. No, yeah, that's the general
well.
idea. But then it's you don't necessarily have to simply conquer everything in Rome 2. We've got different. We've got a different series of victory conditions now. So you could aim for a cultural victory, for example. You could aim to capture territory by converting them to your culture, by spreading your culture. Or you could aim for an economic victory, for example. So you'll hit a series of economic milestones and win that way. But of course, it's a total war game. So you'd be very, very hard pressed not to have a few big battles.
Right.
So,
well, that's what most of us are here for, anyway.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So
what we're seeing
now?
here is this city was damaged in the previous battle that we had. So we're going to go ahead and repair it here. And another new feature of the game is city expansion. So as we we want to build more buildings in our city, but there may not be enough building slots. So to do that, we can go to the construction tab and expand the city, and you'll see the city literally growing in front of your eyes here. And that's opened up a new construction slot, so we can now build a new building in that city. So
I really, really like seeing that.
It's lovely, isn't it? Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and build a workshop here.
And what would a workshop allow us to do?
That'll increase that'll improve the armor and weapons of our armed forces.
And this is an interesting point because the army in the field benefits from being near these cities. You can reclaim lost men in each of the individual units and repair weapons and things like that. You don't always have to go back to the city now to replenish your
No,
forces.
that's exactly right. Yeah. So you as long as you're in friendly territory, you can your replenishment rate of damaged units will rise. So it's always good to be in friendly territory for a number of reasons. But you've got to get out there in the world and conquer. So and what we're going to do is just recruit some more men here.
It also adds an interesting element when you are in enemy territory. You know that the enemy is continuing to get stronger while you're there, and you're continuing to get weaker. So it adds that extra element.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's a number of kind of factors of being out in the world as well. With your armies, you'll face attrition, for example, in enemy territory or in particularly difficult weather environments. So if you're up in the mountains and it's snowy, you'll face harder attrition.
So you mentioned muster stance, march stance, ambush stance. Are there special stances in hostile territory? Like living off the land?
Yeah, there's I can't access the stances right now. So can we edit that bit?
We should mention we are playing in the tutorial of the game,
so we
the
can't.
First campaign. So
we can't actually access all the things. We will be able to access the stances shortly, so we'll have a look over those in a second because we'll be going into one of the stances shortly. So right, we've got some cavalry recruiting here. And this will beef up our ability to attack the enemy swiftly, and with greater impact when we do actually go into battle. So, and you can see at the end turn here, as with previous Total War games, we can see the enemy movement happening as the opposing faction moves its pieces around the map and prepares to fight us. So. The Samnites have brought an army up here, and this is looking like it's going to come up and attack us. So, a good thing to do here is enter a new stance. So, what we're going to do is enter the fortify stance,
which gives you a defensive bonus when you're attacked.
Exactly, it gives you a defensive bonus there, and builds a little fort around you as well, which is quite can be useful in battle. But yeah, there's a number of different stances there. So, we're currently in fortify. So as you can see. It reduces the reinforcement range. It gives us barricades, so extra defences. And if you're on hills and things like that, you can lay spike traps and fireballs and things like that. So it's a very nice thing to have.
All right. Well, let's see how well it works out for us.
Yeah. So it looks like the Samnites are coming in, and they are attacking. Let's attempt that. Okay, so we're going to jump into the battle now.
And in the full campaign, you can have these. You can opt to have these auto-resolved for you. Let the computer play it out, so you don't have to fight each and every battle.
Yeah, and you can actually wait how you want that auto resolve to pan out. You can place your army. When you click auto resolve, you can have a choice of making it fight more aggressively or more defensively. And you can judge that on the balance of forces between your army and the enemy's army. Maybe you do want to play more defensively. So.
Now, we're seeing a fair bit of dialogue and voice acting and things like that. Are these elements going to be present in the main campaign, or is that just for this tutorial?
It's just, this is all part of the narrative and the part of, the actual tutorial and teaching the player how to play, how to actually play the game. And we will have dialogue. We still have, the battle advisors. We still have the campaign advisors. So they can talk you through every element of the game, especially early on. Which there'll come a time when you can just kind of turn them off because you know how to play the game. Right. But they're kind of useful. But we actually the guy who's playing Silanus here, the voice of Silanus that you're hearing, is the actor Mark Strong, who was in Kick-Ass and a number of other films. So we actually engaged him to come and do some voice work for us.
So you still have the same sort of drag and drop
exactly
formation controls.
Yeah, precisely. So what we're doing here is just getting our army set up before the battle. So I'm putting my skirmishers out front here, and I'm keeping my heavy infantry behind, and I've got a unit of Italian swordsmen here where I'm going to attempt to hide in these woods up here as the battle begins. And of course I'm going to bring my general up. I'm going to protect him by keeping him back because he's an incredibly important unit. We'll lose the battle if he's knocked off his horse and killed. So I'm going to keep them with my army to act as a kind of morale boost for the army as well. So let's get the battle started. Now, what you're seeing these new eye symbols here. These mean that the enemy cannot see me at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Because we have this new line of sight system in place. So we know that the enemy's deployed over here somewhere, but there's a series of low hills in the way, so you can't actually see my men. And if you can't draw a line of sight, then you remain hidden from the enemy.
And is line of sight global for all units? If one unit sees you, all units know where you are?
Yes, exactly. So it's really about the opposing generals or the opposing players, in this case the AI or myself, being able to see each other. So if I uncover a single enemy unit as I cross the hill there, while my guys can't necessarily see it, I can, so I can react and bring my guys up. But units like onagers, indirect fire units, will be able to fire over intervening obstacles. If you're using people to scout out and you spot an enemy unit, then if that onager has the range of fire to actually fire upon the unit, then you can go ahead and do that.
I see. One of the frustrations I've had with games in the series in the past has been maintaining the relative position of mixed units in a particular group.
Yeah.
So you draw another line and suddenly everybody lines up next to each other as opposed to in the order that you had them originally.
Yeah.
But you can lock formations in Rome too, right?
You can lock formations, and you also have a number of different group formations that you can set here. So you can put them into all sorts of different formations here, and they've got plenty of special abilities as well. There's loads of new special abilities for the various units. And these guys are skirmishers, so I'm going to activate skirmish mode, which means so we've uncovered some of the Samnite forces here. So I'm going to send my skirmishers in to hopefully draw out their skirmishers, enable my forces to attack them and pick them off before the main body of the Samnite forces arrives.
And for skirmish mode, that's just intended to have them engage, but then fall back as soon as they're pressured.
Exactly. They'll engage, they'll fall back to a safe position, engage again, fall back to a safe position. Skirmishers tend to be ranged weapon specialists, so I have slingers here. They have little slings, they're firing little pellets, quite deadly little balls of stone. Right. And we've been gifted with some cavalry here, which are going to be incredibly useful, especially as the enemy doesn't have any. So I'll be using these to sort of flank the enemy and get that real kind of morale strike when you hit an enemy and a unit in the flank when it's already engaged in the front. Then it definitely starts to worry, and that's really what we want to do. So I'm going to bring them up the side here. Let's just get them lined up there. So they'll move slowly through the forest,
I think
and they will be
your skirmishers as well up into the forest.
Oh, I had my skirmishers selected as well. Right, let's get the horsemen moving there. Let's get these guys back on the hill here. Are these on the move yet?
Looks like it.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So can we just zoom in a little bit and get some of the detail on these units? Because you put a lot of
Yeah.
A lot of attention.
Tremendous amount of detail.
Oh,
I see the line of sight system working there, because my guys have just gone down below the hill. Now, as they reach the top of the hill, those guys will appear again.
Sort of spectral. That was a little.
Yeah, they sort of ghost out. It's
quite
quite
disquieting.
It's a nice little effect. Alright, let's get them on this side of the hill, and we'll see disposition of the enemy forces starting to appear as these guys make visual contact. Oh, and they're quite close. So let's get them firing. You can see these javelin men here.
So I think Medieval was the first game in the series where you decided to make an effort to differentiate, or you were able to differentiate the units.
Yeah, that's right.
So you didn't have 60 identical guys swinging 60
precisely.
other identical guys. So it really adds a lot to the drama.
Yeah, tremendous amount. The level of variation in the units in Rome 2 is quite massive. There's different faces, different armor pieces, different coloured pieces of personal heraldry and things like that as well. But also we have a really nice kind of damage system. So wear and tear and damage. You'll see different sort of damage patterns and dents and dinks on shields and things like that, and weapons. So that really gives a sense that these guys have been been in the wars. So I'm just going to do a little bit of rearranging here.
I've always appreciated the
draw
series.
These guys into combat.
I've always appreciated the series' sort of geometrical approach to battle, and the way it sort of plays with the different shapes. So it's nice to see that.
Yeah,
in play
it's
here.
very satisfying. Yeah. So my skirmishers have been engaged. I'm going to bring some of my heavy infantry in to flank these guys while they're attacking my skirmishers.
So I noticed, for example, a few of your hastati have extra chevrons. So those are veteran units that you have in this battle?
That's right, yeah. And you'll see as they damage units and destroy units, they'll level up during the battle as well. They'll gain more experience during the battle. And you'll see that reflected in the UI.
And the individual army levels up as well, right? I mean, the standard under which all these guys are fighting levels up, and you have the opportunity to add some sort of characteristics to it to make the army better at sieging.
Yeah, that's right. It's what we call the tradition system. So the army as a whole gains experience as it wins, draws, and loses battles. So and as that happens, you go up. The actual army will go up it'll go up levels, sort of RPG progression system, if you like. And the idea with that is every time you gain a new army, your army gains a new level. You can issue a tradition, which is a sort of it's effectively a sort of permanent skill buff to some aspect of the army's ability to fight. So you might upgrade its ability to use siege weapons, for example, or its ability to field archers and use them more effectively. And as you go along, you can then start upgrading those individual skills as well. Right, so we're seeing off the skirmishes quite nicely here, actually, which leaves the rest of the armed forces of the Samnites here coming up the hill. So we're in a pretty good place. We haven't lost much at all.
Yeah, you've done this before, haven't you?
I may have done it once or twice, yeah. Right, I'm just going to bring my horses back to a sensible charging position and bring my skirmishers back to rain stony death upon the approaching forces. So yeah, the back to the tradition system. So you can level up individual traditions as well, and this just further increases their abilities in say siegecraft or archery or any other aspect of their abilities. And
so we see those little green things. That's the general is rallying his forces to inspire them to.
Yep, it's a unit using a special ability of some kind. So we have a bunch of different special abilities. So for example, if we were under fire, we could place ourselves into testudo here, and they suddenly become the armoured tortoise sort of formation that Roman soldiers were famed for. So, but I will take them out of that because it's going to slow them down, and they're not under arrow fire at the moment. So
that's not an ability you would have if you were leading, say, a Greek phalanx or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, the Greek phalanxes would have abilities relevant to their fighting style, to their weapon loadout, and that kind of thing. So.
But a Roman general could recruit Greek phalanxes as mercenaries and then have that ability.
Of course, yeah, and you could bring that unique fighting style into your army through yeah, through mercenaries.
What's your favorite type of army to control in this game? Who do you like to play with?
I quite like using. I quite like really mobile armies, so I tend to sort of swing towards using.
The Parthians or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly. The eastern sort of factions, because you've got lots of kind of mounted archer units, which can kind of run in and skirmish and then pull away again. There we are. Oh, they're coming in earnest now, aren't they? Let's get.
This is the last act of a desperate man here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we say that. Last time I thought I very nearly lost my general. So
it's kind of embarrassing. For
it
is
really. Yeah, yeah. You'd think I'd be a bit more experienced than that, But hey, there we go. Even Caesar had off days. Right, go on, get in. Right, I'm committing my forces in earnest now.
So things get a little bit chaotic at this point. There's a level you can pull back to where you see a more traditional sort of chit-based organization
so
of the army.
And we can actually zoom in a bit on that and see it in more detail. So this is the tactical map. And it enables you to see the general disposition of forces. So pretty much everything's looking engaged here.
Probably more useful in a much larger battle, but if
yes,
you're trying to orchestrate a few different armies besieging a city, I see that being very useful.
Yeah, exactly, and it's very handy in those kind of larger engagements where especially when you've got multiple ship units as well in a combined battle where you've got sort of navies and land forces fighting, and to be able to sort of see everything just at a glance like that is very, very useful. Especially if there's got far-flung units that maybe I'm looking over this way and I'm not seeing those guys, and I'm like, okay, we've got some more enemies coming up here. It's just really a really useful way to just increase your battlefield intelligence briefly. Oh, actually, let's keep you over here. Finish them off.
So looking at this, I mean, the game seems very close to being done. What's left for Creative Assembly to work on at this point?
Well, it's really just polish and balance and, tweaking all those millions of little percentage variables, between things like, different traits that different factions have, and particular skills, and how much of a bonus those skills give your units, and it's really just about playtesting and balancing, making sure all that stuff is working properly.
Those guys need to get to work. They're not helping.
They really do, and I really need to get my general out of trouble. He's been charged. I've been lax again. Let's get him out of trouble.
Well, you're trying to fulfill two sort of goals here.
Well,
describing the game as well as playing it.
This is I'm kind of multitasking with
Yeah, we saw some chevrons go up over this unit
Yep.
in the rear there. It's getting promoted during the battle.
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly what's happening, yeah. So everybody's plugging away. I've generally got sort of superiority in arms in most of these situations, so... And over here's, I think that's his general over there somewhere. Where is his general? Oh no, he has engaged with his general. There
Isn't
he is.
Him? Yeah, he's in the mix there.
Really needs to take him down. So there's a cavalry ability here called Draco, which they sort of charge in with their horns blaring and their war cries, and it does a nice little sort of morale debuff against the unit that you're fighting, that you're charging into. So, particularly useful if you've got an enemy unit that's engaged. Oh, they keep going for my general.
They know
it's
what
a
they're
popular
doing.
target, yeah. And that's that. Yeah, as I say, that's a really nice way to kind of damage unit morale. You're fighting an enemy, and then you hit them in the flank with another unit such as cavalry, and obviously we're doing that extra damage because you're hitting them in the side, but also you're really bashing their morale because they're being hit in the flank, and that's a terrifying thing when 100 horses come charging into the side of your unit. It's looking kind of in the balance here, actually.
Yeah, they've kind of rallied a little bit on you.
Yeah, they have
I'm
a
a little
bit,
worried about where this is going to go at this point.
Me too.
That you would go on record on IGN.
Yeah, let's see.
Not doing well at
Let's see. Who are these guys? Right, my levy slingers. Okay, they're out of ammo. That's why they've stopped. So I might as well just charge them in and get them busy.
Hand-to-hand's the only option for them then.
Yeah, it's not looking too hot right now, actually.
And so, in the tutorial, if the player loses this battle, where do they go from here? Do they try to rebuild, or is the player forced to reload?
Yeah, you can just restart the battle and try it again. So it doesn't set you back too badly.
That's one of the things I've appreciated about Total War as well is the fact that failure doesn't end the game for you.
No,
that you're able to recover. And
that's right.
That's been very nice to see. I actually, when I played this same level the other day, I had exactly that same experience where I made a very, very stupid error.
Yeah.
And forced myself to climb back out of the hole that I made.
Yeah.
And it was gratifying to see a game where you're not only allowed to do that, but encouraged to do that.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Right, it's not looking good, I'll be honest. I've got routing units left, right and centre. I've got my general and one unit of horsemen here. I've managed to bring my general up and rally these guys, but they're pretty winded. Look at them, they're moving really slowly.
Moving very fast.
And they're going to get caught, and I imagine they'll break. Yeah, so look, I'm publicly losing one of my own battles. This is brilliant. You see, you think you've got it all in the bag, and then you take your eye off the ball for a second, and look what happens.
I really like the animations of this. I mean, the soldiers look like they're connecting with one another.
Yeah,
and just sort of swinging with the air here. I mean, it's too bad for you that you're on the wrong end of
yeah.
it. But
I seem to be on the losing side, yeah.
But it delivers that cinematic Total War feel and does it in a way that's I think much more compelling and credible than we've seen, even with Empire and Shogun 2, which were themselves big steps forward for the franchise.
Yeah, it's a big jump in detail for us in visual fidelity. There we go, Sam Knights have won. So yeah, it's a big jump in visual fidelity. It's a big jump in just technically as well. The amount of motion capture we can do and the amount of motion capture data we can actually get in the game is increased by a significant amount. We've built our own motion capture studio, just down the road from the studio itself. So it means we can just capture more, and we can capture more accurately because we've got high res cameras, high def cameras, and we can capture more people fighting in the same volume. So there's it just looks that much greater in combat. So.
Well, that's fantastic, Al. Thank you for coming by today
it's my pleasure.
To show us this game. When are players going to be able to get their hands on this game? What's it
so we're out September 3rd, and we're obviously pre-orders are open now. And if you do pre-order, you get the Greek States Culture Pack free of charge, which is the three kind of key Greek states, which is Athens, Epirus, and Sparta, of course, as well. The famous Spartans. Although at the starting point of Sparta in Rome 2, which is around 272 BC, they're definitely on the wane. So your challenge is to bring them back to their former glory. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Al.
My pleasure.
For all things Total War and all things video games, keep it locked to IGN.